Greetings, ghouls and ghoulettes. It's your old fiend Corey from the Twin Ports Horror Society. This evening, we are joined by local filmmaker Brandon Cole. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about some of his past, present, and upcoming projects as a local filmmaker. So why don't you first just tell us about what you've been working on, what you got coming on.
All right, so we actually just wrapped last week a movie called The Hand That Feeds, which I was an assistant director on. I also did some production coordinator type stuff and some second unit directing a little bit. Great cast and crew. I believe you were an extra on that as well.
I did one scene, yep.
Yeah, and I think I was the guy that was coming in there and kind of telling you what to do. And I didn't even realize that it was you. But that was really fun. We also just dropped this past Saturday a 48 that we did recently online called Some Cheesy 90s Horror Flick. Just a little 3-minute thing. That was completely at Death Calm Studios, which is the production company that I run in the area, along with Scott Hensley and Heather Olson, are my co-owners and the people that have been with me for the past few years now. And we got a few other things coming up. COVID kind of derailed things a little bit, but this year I've already directed 3 short films, which matches a year high that I achieved a few times. So the fact that it's only May leads me to believe that I'll hit a new year high at some point this year with a 4th film. Like I said, worked on The Hand That Feeds for a month with some great people. And that's great because, when you're a guy like me and, horror is a passion, as you can see the wall of DVDs behind me. And at some point I'll give you a little glimpse into my little world of the stuff that's around here. It's a passion, and, but not everybody makes horror films. So, I started out working on Strange Nature with Jim Olgilla. That was my first, that was my into the industry. And then from there was a couple hires that weren't horror films. So it's like every couple of years when the horror film comes on, that's not my own, that I can jump on and be part of. It's really cool because then, and that's no disrespect to the non-horror films that I've worked on as a crew hand, but where my passion is. So.
Nice. So let's tell us a bit about Death Calm Studio. Where exactly are you located? Where do you do your work? And just tell people about that for anyone who doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah. So the broad answer is Duluth, and really how it started when I was a kid. My grandma would show me all these old monster movies, and then one day I was at the video store with my mom. This is mid '90s, and I saw American Werewolf in London, the videotape, and I said, I just watched The Wolfman. Like, I gotta get this. My mom's like, no, absolutely not. You're 7. You can't watch this. And I threw a tantrum in the video store to where she got, let me rent it. And then the transformation scene, the one that I have tattooed on my arm, scared the shit out of me. And not only that, but it's one of the most iconic scenes of all time. And it scared me down a career path. Because every time I tried to get away from it, I was in bands in high school, I was in radio, I was in all the other forms of, media. And even when I came down to Duluth to go to film school, and got into the media production program with Brandon Leno, I was originally going to go for radio broadcasting because I'd been doing that for a number of years. And the first time I picked up a camera in his classroom, it was like, nope, I got to go back to film. That bug never left. And so what I did, I started in 2011 a production company, which at the time was called Charbonneau Productions. And Charbonneau would have been my last name had my ancestors not changed it to Cole when they came overseas. So it was kind of a nod to them. And it was originally a name to be put on YouTube to house my student work. And couple of years had gone by, and as I was doing horror stuff as I wanted to do, I kind of was under the assumption, you know, Charbonneau really doesn't speak horror. It's a good nod to my past, but there's nothing horror about it that grabs people. So I was searching for, before I did all the legal paperwork, and you know, as I was in the process of doing, I said, you know, I want to change the name. And I had been racking my brain for a few weeks, and I went up to Grand Marais to visit some family. And unfortunately, within 45 minutes of me showing up at Grand Marais, my mom got a phone call that one of her best friends had committed suicide. And my mom was in hysterics, and rightfully so. And we stayed up all night watching Saw and Hostel and all those, you know, those bloody torture porn, as they would call them, you know, those ones from the early 2000s that really went for the jugular. And my mom likened it to, you know, watching this death and torture and destruction on the screen was helping her cope with the death of her friend that had taken place. And that's where I found the name Death Calm, because, you know, the death that I put on screen can help calm those actually dealing with things in their lives. So that's where the name kind of came from, and it just kind of spiraled from there. And right after I changed the name was when Strange Nature and Jim Ojala called, and I was able to get on there as a PA. But the first short film that we did under Death Calm was called The Dark Room, and it was amazing how that was just, it was a student project, a reimagining of a foreign short film that my teacher had came to me and showed me this short film and said, recreate this, remake this for your yearly project. And I did, with the help of some great people in that classroom, and it garnered some attention. And that's kind of when we went, whoa, you know, maybe there's a little bit more to this. And it's just kind of built from there, where I found some people and we did some things, and then realized that those people weren't the right people. And then, like I said, a few years ago, I got the right people in Heather Olson and Scott Hensley in place. My girlfriend, Victoria Tanley, she owns her own studio as well, but she edits all of my stuff as well now. So we've got this core of people in place now that really, the last few years, we've kind of gained even more traction. And it's kind of funny because Sam Weston, who's another local filmmaker, not in horror at all, he keeps introducing people to me as me being one of the most well-regarded filmmakers in the area. And I'm kind of like, I don't even know if I deserve those accolades, but apparently that's the reputation that I've built for myself in working on my stuff and working on stuff for other people over the last almost decade now. But that's really where it started, and it was just kind of grown from there, and we've just ran with it. And, you know, we're, at the end of the day, we're a group of friends who get together and make films. And I think, honestly, the person in our group that has the most training is my girlfriend, because she has a 4-year editing degree from the cities. You know, I have a 1-year film degree with Brandon Leno. Heather is a theater major, and Scott Hensley has no formal training. He's just a horror fan, a horror nerd like us, that when we needed a cameraman out of necessity, he took the camera that we had at the time and locked himself in a room with YouTube videos for 48 hours and taught himself how to use that camera. And now, over the last few years, he's taken it to the point where he actually purchased a Blackmagic, because that's how much he's gotten into cinematography. And then, as a fellow horror fan, it's him and I that pen most of the stuff that we shoot, either co-writing or one of us will write, you know, whatever we shoot. So that's kind of the dynamic that we've built. But, and then the same thing with the rest of our people who I'm not mentioning. I have a great team behind me, but at the end of the day, we're all just a great group of friends that come together because we like to have fun and make movies. That's really what we are. So.
That's awesome. Awesome. So what, I mentioned that you just mentioned that you do co-writing. So if you're doing your own project, I mean, what roles do you usually take on yourself?
When I take on a project, it's either something that typically, and we're for hire too, but when we'll work with anybody, and I've got a project lined up that I'll be directing for a person hopefully later this year. that has really, other than that, has nothing to do with the studio. But when we're doing stuff, I typically will take on the role of writer or co-writer. Sometimes Scott sends me something and I'm like, I don't even need to co-write this. This is fine the way it is. And we just, hit production, and then he's the only writer. But I will mostly take on the role of like director. And a lot of times I'll be ADing myself. Heather Olson, one of my business partners, is also a great AD, but she's so multi-hat, multifaceted that a lot of times her talents are better used as like a script supervisor or a UPM. So I end up ADing myself a little bit, which is fine. I can do that, but definitely, I like to direct and write, as anybody does. Everybody wants to be a writer director. But when I'm working for other people, I like stuff in the production side of it, like AD, production coordinator, that kind of stuff. I also don't mind being like in the art department and doing some blood effects. So that's where my world is.
Nice. So how many projects have you put out under the Death Calm label? Because you said it's been running for almost a decade or so now, roughly.
Yeah, and we've probably put out way more shorts than we've needed to, because I think with some of the stuff that we have in post right now, I'm coming up on 20 shorts directed, which any filmmaker I talk to, they're like, you need to do a feature. That's way too many shorts. But they don't understand some of the things that were 2015, 2016, we were gearing up for a feature, and then we lost some of our core crew. So then I had to rebuild the team with Heather and Scott and Victoria and others. And then we had to go through the process of getting them through shorts so they knew what they were doing. And then we were gearing up for a feature, and then COVID happened. So, it's just unfortunate circumstances that have led to us not doing a feature yet. However, that's something that's going to be in the pipeline very soon. We're going to be talking within the next month as the core team members about where do we stand on the feature, what's the next route. And there's a couple of routes that we've talked about taking, but it was in the pipeline before COVID. 2020 was really going to be the year that we ramped that up. And now coming out of it, we just got to get that train rolling again, and probably do a few more shorts in the meantime, just so that people can see that we've got content coming out. But the planning of a feature is definitely very much in the near future for us.
Nice. I'm sure that's a lot more work than doing a short, obviously. Yeah. So when you do a short, I mean, for people out there, I mean, that's something that's probably just a couple minutes to like 15, 20 minutes or so. Yeah. A lot of them. And then how long does it take to, when you start the production on something short like that, how long does that take to, from start to finish to work on that?
Months at times, other times a couple days. I mean, we've done 48s or 50/50s, which they have time constraints of, you need to do this in 48 hours, or you need to do this in 50 days. And we can pump those out, the 2, 3, 4 minute, then the 50-minute, like 48s have 7-minute time limits, 50/50s have 10-minute time limits. And we can pump those out in the time allotted when we're doing something just for a YouTube presence or just for us, we often take a little bit more time with it to make sure we do it right. The film, the last film that we released on that regard was a film called ADD, which Scott Hensley had wrote he's a former pharmacist, and he kind of wanted to take his shot at the pharmaceutical companies and some things that he had seen. And so that's where ADD lives, in that realm, which is on YouTube if you want to watch it. Probably one of my favorites that we've done, but we shot it in February of 19, and throughout, post-production, finally later in the year, I had it to my sound guy, and he was coming to deliver me the score, and he got everything stolen out of his car. So then I had to give it to my brother, who's another sound guy. He rescored it and mixed it, but that took him a while because then he got quarantined out of the country. when COVID happened. So him and his girlfriend had went to Peru so he could propose, and they got quarantined down there for almost a month. So we ended up we just released it in December of last year. So, that took almost 2 years to put out that 8 minutes. But, each one has its own time. A lot of times we get them out way quicker than that, but, so even that can take a while. And obviously, we shooting wise, typically 2 or 3 days, for most of the shorts that I've done. I've done 2 5-day shoots, for the longer shorts, and both of those ended up being about 25-30 minutes. So, we're going in the right steps for the feature, because when you get a 5-6 day shoot in for a short, that's basically a fourth to a third of a feature. So if we can do that, there's some, to me that says, we can handle the other 2-3 weeks on top of that. So, that's what it takes.
So, going back to kind of COVID there, obviously that gave everybody in the whole world setbacks. Were you able to work on anything during that period, or what was that like for you in your company?
Right before COVID, I was ADing, co-directing, and made a cameo on a short film. And during the cameo, I blew out the ligaments in my ankle. Got my foot caught in a divot in the snowbank, and there it went. So
Ouch.
I literally had surgery on my foot 2 days before the world shut down. So the first 2 months of lockdown was nothing for me because I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't go anywhere anyway. So it hadn't set into me the same way that it probably set into the rest of the world, that I can't go anywhere and do anything because I couldn't leave my house anyway. But once I was in a boot and walking again, and then me and my girlfriend moved to where we're living now, it set in hard, and I lost a lot of the year, honestly, just to battling depression. I did, we finished off post-production for ADD. I finished off a little bit of writing. But unfortunately, I lost a lot of the year to depression. And then I started working on some of these things like The Hand That Feeds. I was brought into that in February. So that took up a lot of my February, March, April, and May, just to help with the pre-planning of that. I was working with Nick Hansen, who's another local filmmaker who's making a social distancing adaptation of Hamlet. I was virtually ADing him. And then, there were things that I was working on. And then another one of the short films that we shot, we started planning back in November and finally shot it early April. It's not a Death Calm short. It's something that we were hired to do out of the cities, but a lot of my people were on it. And, so yes and no. A lot of times with COVID, I just sat there and watched TV because I was battling this. Will I ever be able to make film again? Because, the entire, as you said, the entire world was hit, but that freelance life really took a dive, because when you freelance and your next job depends on what's coming to the area, even when the world starts to open back up, pre the vaccinations and stuff, there was that thought of, we still can't get, the world's opening back up, but we still can't get a 30-40 person crew together because of social distancing regulations. So there was a lot of, will the film industry open back up? And even last year, when it opened up for a while in the summer and then into the fall, the film industry was still stagnant. So I was going, do I have to find a different career? What's going to go on? Because this is my life. This is all I've known. And thankfully, it's showing signs that it's coming back. But
yeah, obviously it's been tough for everybody, but it's really great to see people are starting to get back to work. Things are slowly starting to get back to normal, if you will. So hopefully everybody's starting to, get work done on stuff like this. Yeah, the entertainment industry was obviously hit pretty hard on these levels. So when you're working on your own stuff, how do you deal with like budgets and funding? Because I think that's kind of an interesting thing a lot of people wonder about for, when people go about their own projects, such as movies or, books, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so I've been really lucky in that regard, where a lot of the people that I've worked with understand, these are shorts that are going to go on YouTube. We're not going to make any money off them, but they might get us jobs in the future because they're selling pieces. They're, look what we can do. So I've been very grateful to have a team that is willing to donate a weekend and then some extra prep time and not really ask for any monetary benefit, which on one hand, I hate that I can't pay people, but I also see that I'm blessed to have people that are willing to work for basically meals. And that's where a lot of our budget for the shorts at least come down to, is that, if I can get $500 to feed everybody for the weekend, or, I've also had, I go to Brandon Leno's room where I went to school, and I grab interns because he does an internship where they need, so many hours. So I'll grab some people that want to be on the film and slot them in as my PAs, and then they get intern hours. And a lot of them actually stay on with us, and grow with us. And I've had some of those people who have a little bit of spending money here and there, that I actually originally grabbed as interns, go, hey, I've got extra money for this reason. Give me a EP credit, and here's $300 for the short for the weekend. And then that's how we feed people. But nobody has, including myself, has made monetary benefit from the shorts that we've produced. Anyway, I've been hired to direct a short here and there that I've made a little bit of money because that person has paid me, and I probably would have done it whether they, even if they didn't, because it was a horror film and I liked the project, or whatever. But right now we're surviving on crafty money. The biggest budget that we ever had was on a film called Bring Them to Me, which again nobody got paid for, and we had done that for a kid. His name was Dexter Ojeda. And he was terminally ill, and it was kind of one of his last wishes to be in a horror film. And Dale Botten, who's a local filmmaker, been around for a while, he knew the family, and he contacted me, and he's like, hey, this kid wants to be in a horror film, can you make that happen? And I said sure. And we worked with the family. We crowdfunded about $1,200 on Indiegogo. And everybody, the community came together for that one. Like Duluth Grill reached out to me, and they catered the entire thing free of charge. So we were, other Super One gave us gift cards. A couple other local restaurants like Dickie's, before they disbanded, that used to be up the hill, they gave us some gift cards. And so we probably had about $2,000 in all from local gift cards plus cash. And then, I don't even know what it cost Duluth Grill to give that week of catering to us, because they catered 6 days.
Wow.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for free. So I really got to give, Duluth Grill, those guys are awesome. And they own OMC as well. The owner of those establishments, though, that, he really came to us and was like, what can I do to help out? And, I was like, well, we need to feed people who are working for free for this week to make this movie for this kid. And he was all over it.
That's super awesome. Yeah.
So, so that's probably around $2,000 is the biggest budget that I've played with to this point. And again, nobody got paid. We all donated our time for Dexter. I'd like to get, the hope is that when we do a feature, I have the budget to pay everybody up front. But even my team, a lot of the members have come in and said, let's just get this first one out however we need to, and you can sign me to a contract that says that I get paid if the movie makes any money. So I'm it's a route that I hope I don't have to take, but it's a route that I can take. And it seems that my team is in consensus with that route. So hopefully we can get a feature going one way or the other. But my goal is to get a budget to pay everybody. And I'm also working on right now a feature length documentary that I want to do, that will probably only take $3-4 grand to shoot. And I can't really get into it too much right now because it's really in the planning stages, and nothing is set in stone yet. But there is potential that I might be partnering with Keith Hopkins on it. I got to meet with him later this month to solidify that, but it seems like everyone in their camp is on board with, not partnering, not financially, but to make this part of a local universe that he has already created, that I'm sure you know well of, the Gravedigger Dave.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, that's not a set in stone thing, but both Keith and Matt, I've talked to them about this documentary that I want to do for a full length ghost hunting documentary, really centered on one location. And, I talked to them, I reached out to them initially because I'm like, I don't want to step on your toes because you're already doing ghost hunting documentaries in the area. And Keith was all for, hey, go do the documentary. And then there was some talk of, hey, maybe there's room for us to partner on this and make this part of what Keith has already built. And then I was able to talk to Matt about it because Matt was playing a character on The Hand That Feeds. So I had some time to talk to him about it, and he was like, hell yeah, let's, how Matt gets, like, hell yeah, let's do this. And so I got to sit with them sometime in June and hammer out the details. But I would say it's leaning towards a very positive that this is going to be part of that and partnering with them on it. And even if it doesn't, it's still going to happen because they've gave me the go ahead, that this is not stepping on their toes. So that might be, a feature length thing that comes out before the narrative, just because that's going to be easier to shoot and easier to do on a shoestring budget. But we've got a lot of stuff kind of in play and in place for that kind of stuff. And I'm really looking forward to it because, at the end of the day, I'm a horror fan first. This just happens to be, I've been able to make my living to an extent doing it, which I never thought I would do. When I was when I got the job on Strange Nature, I went, holy shit, I'm actually here, and Jim, a funny story about him, because Jim has been very good to me in my career. The blood recipes and a lot of the blood and gut recipes that Death Calm uses are Jim Ojala's, because he gave them to me after Strange Nature, and we've ran with that, and that's been kind of a stick that we've been able to use, is that we have a blood recipe from a Hollywood special effects artist. So that's been a selling point for us in the past. And I was actually working a few years ago on another film, and I was in the art department specifically for blood, and they wanted me to make snakeskin to put in this old broken down terrarium to make it look like, a snake had been in there.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and I was trying to think, how do I do this with the tools that Jim gave me? And I tried and it didn't work. I tried something and it didn't work. And, over and over, I was trying things that didn't work. And I went to the art director and I said, how long do I have until they need this? Because that was basically my task for the day, was make this snake skin. And she's like, well, you've got about 2 hours before they need it now. And I was like, okay, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to step outside. And I stepped outside and I texted Jim and I said, do you have time for a call or are you on a set? And he was like, I've got time. So I gave him a call and I said, with the recipes that you gave me, how do I make snakeskin? And there was this pause, and this whole pause, I'm thinking, all right, Ojala is going to drop some knowledge. And then he goes, I have no idea. And I went, well, shit. And he's like, well, if you figure it out, let me know. So I went back inside, and there was another guy actually who had coincidentally also worked on Strange Nature. His name was Ben Curry, who was in the art department with me, and he was kind of helping me. And I finally, what I did was I took, those tubes that tennis balls come in, and I sliced it in half, and I latexed it, and I let it dry, and I, put a couple layers on there, and then we took the black and brown Sally Beauty hairspray and kind of did like a weather dusting on it. And then right before it was completely dry, Ben Curry went and found we were shooting at Nopaming Sanitarium. So he went and found a window that had been torn out and ripped the netting off of it, and then we press that netting down in it to give it that scaly effect, and it looks so good. So then I was texting Ojala pictures. I was like, this is what I do. This is how you do it. So I was actually able to give him a little something back for his arsenal after, you know, all of the tricks that he's given me over the years. So that was a really cool moment for me.
That's
And
super awesome.
you know, even with the hand that feeds, every set that I step on, including my own since then, something that Jim taught me in some way or another always rears its head. And I find that, you know, every set that I'm ever on, I'm sending Jim a text saying, you know, this lesson that you taught me almost a decade ago just helped me through this. And it's a constant thing. And you know, I can't thank him enough for the start that he gave me, not only, but then, you know, I talk to him at least every couple months, and he's been a real, you know, mentor and, you know, mentor and mental support of keeping me going at times. You know, he's the guy that's, you know, just gut it out. Don't do the day job. Live off ramen if you have to. Just get out there and do it. And you know, his support has been unwavered since I
Yeah,
met him. Dude.
that's super awesome to hear. I mean, the only time I've ever talked to him is when, you know, he was the first episode of this show, and I hadn't ever talked to him before,
Really?
or met him or anything. It was just that, you know, we started. I won't take too much time talking about our show here, but you know, when we came up with the idea, we didn't know. We're like, I don't know, is anybody gonna want to talk to us, and how is that gonna go? And so, you know, I reached out to Jim. Was one of the people I reached out to because he was in the group already, you know, kind of talking
Yeah.
to people. And I was like, all right. So I talked to him, and he was such a great guy, and it was amazing, and it was so good to talk to him to get this show going. So I also have to give him credit, you know, for just helping this show, you know, without even trying. You know, he agreed to do it. We had that chat. It was awesome. And then I was like, all right, I'm like, I think we have something that, you know, a couple people are going to be interested in watching.
Right.
So it's
No,
great.
he's a great guy. And if I can, I'm gonna real quick plug a couple of my other guys that you might want to talk to. Kurt Eckstein and Doug Igney. They're out of Kettle River. They're blood guys that I've worked with a handful of times. Great guys, local guys. They might be someone that you might want to talk to. They make horror films as well. I don't know what their studio is called now. It used to be Pirates Due Nord. Then it was the Kettle River Project, and I think they might have changed it again. But they produce horror films locally as well as come on my stuff and work blood. So those might be some guys for you to talk to as well. I know you've already talked to Keith, and Jim, and I don't really know much of other horror people in the area. So, I mean, there's a few of us sneaking around here, but
yeah, well, it's really great to kind of see all the different projects people have going on that and just kind of connect with all these people. And that was kind of the whole point of the group in general, was just to let's find all the fans so we can talk about these movies. But then also, you know, there's going to be people who have their own projects and passions, and let's meet those people and try to keep everyone connected. So it's been awesome, you know, talking to you, and you talk about people I've already talked to, and it's just super cool to see how everybody has, you know, interacted here and there.
Well,
really
and that's the feel that I get not only within the horror community, but with the local film community in general. You know, that is growing in the last few handful of years, from what it was when I started, to what it's become. I'm seeing a lot of people who want to help each other succeed. You know, there's a feeling out in Hollywood. One time Jim was talking to me about, you know, the way Hollywood works, and that there's a general feel out in Hollywood of, for me to succeed, the guy sitting next to me has to fail. And in the Duluth community, that's kind of non-existent. There's a general understanding that for me to succeed, this guy next to me can also succeed, and we can build each other up. And you know, even when we work within the same genre, me and Keith are not rivals by any means. We help each other out. We promote each other's stuff. Same thing with Kurt and those guys. It's like, these guys are doing horror in the area, and we love it. We love them, and they love us. And even again, Sam Weston, who's more of a fantasy filmmaker. It's like, he's doing his thing, and I'm like, how can I help out? Or I'm doing my thing, and he's like, how can I help out? And that's the general consensus in of the area. Even Alex Gutterman, who's a local filmmaker, when we were shooting ADD, he threw one of his biggest actors, Nora, at us, and she came on and she did an amazing performance. So there's really this consensus in the local area of people really trying to help each other and help build each other up and help each other succeed. So it's really a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear that too. That's just great. So why don't you tell us about what projects you have coming up? What's next for you? What's next for DEFCOM?
What's next for DEFCOM ultimately is to start planning the feature film. Like I said, there might be some shorts that happen under that. This documentary is going to happen under DEFCOM as well, and looking at maybe late summer, early fall to shoot that. We do have 2 other short films in the can that are in editing right now. Both are actually owned by other production companies that we were brought on to do, but with both of them, there's a lot of my people on them, and my girlfriend is editing both of them. So I have been able to see through the editing eye of her, and that these projects are coming along nicely. I'm also really enjoying seeing some of the stuff that we shot on the Black Magic that Scott bought, because he bought it during COVID. So it's just been recently that he's been able to start playing with it. And I can, the first time I looked through that camera lens and, saw how much of an upgrade that was from our Sony A6, which was an upgrade from our Canon 5D that we started out with, to see this progression level of, holy crap, this actually looks like a cinema quality thing. Now with the Black Magic, it gets you really excited, especially to start gearing up for that feature, knowing that at worst case scenario, you've got a camera that can pull it off if you have the right lighting, which is really where it's at. Next thing for me personally, coming out of The Hand That Feeds, I'm going down on June 12th, I believe it is, to co-direct the final scene for Hamlet 2020 of Act 5. Nick Hansen, who directed and produced the film, is also playing Hamlet, and this is the final, bloodbath scene at the end of Hamlet. And Nick came to me, he's like, I don't know much about blood. Would you like to come down and co-direct this scene for me? And I was like, hell yeah. And I'm actually going to meet with him at the time. I know this is probably not going to air right away, but at the time this interview shot, as soon as we hang up, I'm going to go meet him and start planning that. So even though that's not a horror thing, I get to play with some blood. I get to bring some of my people on. I also mentioned that there's a 4th short that I'm hopefully this year, going to be directing, called Chained, for a guy whose name is Jonathan Crane. And he reached out to me last year and said, I'd really like for you to direct my next short. And he's going to be starting crowdfunding on that really soon. So, there's definitely some stuff in the pipeline, getting back together, getting going again. And hopefully some more films will shoot in the area that I can jump on as a crew hand, as I did with The Hand That Feeds. And what was really cool to me during that process was that we were shooting The Hand That Feeds, and there was another film, and I apologize to people that work on this because I know a lot of them. Jessica Bergen, who was actually a producer on Strange Nature, was involved with this. I think it was called Abroad, or it started with an A, but they were shooting in 2 harbors and Up the Shore at the same time that we were shooting The Hand That Feeds. And that's the first time in the 10 years that I've been here that I've ever seen 2 feature films shooting side by side in the area. So I'm hoping that that's somewhat of an omen for work to come. And so hopefully a lot of stuff in the pipeline.
Excellent. So I guess The Hand That Feeds, which has came up a lot, but I mean, a lot of people have been talking about that around town and, hearing that it's been filming, etc. What can you tell us about that as far as what the movie's about?
Not a lot,
Yeah.
unfortunately, without violating my NDA. What I can tell you is that it is a horror film, and it's centrally shot at the Caddyshack bar, which is not going to be the name of the bar in the film. Um, but it does parallel some other horror movies that we've seen. It does play on the supernatural, demonic aspects of things, and but I think it also does so in an interesting way that it's going to be a very fun film to watch, and the cast brought it, and everybody on the team, the director, the writer, the producers, the PAs, the cameraman, everything in between. They brought their A game to this project, which was really cool to see. And Nick Sullivan, who I've worked with a number of times, plays Russell, the lead in the film. And I've worked with him 7 times. First was Strange Nature. We were both PAs. The 7th time was this. And then the 5 times in between, I actually directed him in short films. So, and our bond, I think, between me and him grew even stronger on this production than it was in the past, which was already really strong. And he's been in several films for me, which, if you go on our YouTube channel, Death Calm Studios, you can check those out. The ones that he's in, my favorite two are Sloth and The Doll. And those are two of my favorite ones that we've shot just because of how he brings his A game to it. He's a phenomenal actor who I plan to work with again and again and again. And he's down in the cities now, but he was local here to Duluth for quite a while. But he seems to be ready to go anytime I call him. And that's cool. And it's probably something that will happen again, is when I've got a, script in my head and I'm thinking through the planning stages of things. A lot of times I call him and I go, how do you feel about playing this character? And he goes, I like it. And I haven't even put anything on paper yet. And then I'm writing that character with him in mind, and there's a rule of thumb for auditioning and casting, but I also find that if you have a certain actor in mind for something, write a character around them, because it makes that character that much stronger. Like when we shot Sloth, which was originally supposed to be part of a larger project about the 7 deadly sins, but that project never came to fruition. It was supposed to be a feature-length anthology, but we got the rights to the project back because that project fell apart. So it's just another short that lives on YouTube now. But I called him and I said, how do you feel about playing a serial killer where your story arc is you kill lazy people because you hate slothful people, but then your character realizes through the film that he himself has become lazy in the choosing of his victims, and then starts to hate himself because he realizes that he has killed a few people who weren't necessarily slothful because he, saw the signs but didn't do enough research to, are they actually lazy? And then he killed in what his mind are innocents, and then starts to hate himself because of what he's done, and realize that he becomes lazy. And then, that plays into some stuff at the end of the film. And he's like, I love it. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to write it around you. You're the lead. And, so he was the lead before I even put anything on paper, because I was crafting the character around him, just having worked with him so many times.
Nice. That's great. Well, as I mentioned off screen or off recording, my show has 0 budget because we're cheap. And so we've only got a few minutes before Zoom runs up. So with this last minute or two, what else do you want to, or anything else you want to tell people or make sure they know, et cetera, et cetera?
Just, follow our Facebook, Death Calm Studios, follow our YouTube. Because that's how you keep up with what we're doing if you are interested. If you are a local person in the area that wants to get into horror, wants to get into film, reach out to me, because that's how I find my people. Like I've mentioned, these people that I find, they start out with me in a small capacity and they build their way up in the company. So if anyone here has any interest in doing films, whether it's horror or not, you know, reach out to me, because I'm a guy that can get you connections and get you a job. And I love to do that. I love to help out. So, you know, feel free to reach out to me. Find me on Facebook, Brandon Cole. I'm very, you know, easy to talk to. So, you know, feel free to reach out if you want to get into this, because, you know, if you have a dream to do this, do it. That's what I've found. And it, you know, I might not be financially where I wanted to be, but I'm still making a living and I'm still doing it. So, you know, you just got to grind it. It's a grind. It's not an easy industry to be in. It's not an easy thing. You know, people see Hollywood and they look at the glitz and the glamour and they're like, oh, that's gotta be fun and easy, when they don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and the people like me who aren't in front of the camera and the time that we put in to make things happen. But at the end of the day, it is very rewarding. So if you are interested in doing something like this, reach out to me, please.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for taking time to, you know, chat with us today. Make sure that you keep everybody in the group up to date about, you know, what you have going on, and let's keep talking about, you know, your projects in the future. You know, we'd like to follow up and chat again, you know, once you have some other stuff going on.
Absolutely. Once I have something a little bit more concrete.